Good morning. The video you are about to watch is practice recording number 2 of a new podcast series with myself and a good friend of mine named Justin Matthews. The test title that we're using is Where to From Here. We're fairly certain at this point that that title is going to stick, but these are just our recordings where we're finding our flow, we're harmonizing our energies, and we're really working to hone in the details of this podcast. But we feel that even these practice recordings are tackling subjects and the conversation has value. We know that it affects both of us individually, and we firmly believe that there's at least a handful of folks out there who very well may be drawn to the type of conversations and the topics that we're trying to address. What the gap that we both feel needs to be filled a little bit more is sort of in between the airy-fairy, hippy-dippy, light and love, spiritual extreme, and the earth-bound, all there is this reality, this earth, this 3D, and there's nothing else. That extreme, those extreme polarities on the spectrum of reality and truth. We don't feel there's a lot of talk going on about, because we both consider ourselves and lead our lives with our relationship with spirit, with God, with universe, with creation as the foundation and the most important relationship in his life individually, in my life individually. And we're yearning to have more of that in the regular world, in regular 3D world. Although we would argue that it elevates us out of the 3D and takes us into the higher dimensions, 4th dimension, 5th dimension, and beyond. We believe there is a conscious evolutionary process going on. It takes work, however, and it takes the willingness to really investigate what is reality here, in the here, what is going on here, but more importantly, what is the there? Giving that more voice, getting out of the box, using our imagination, and using our own lives and what we're doing in our own lives to live in the there, and using those examples to to try to show the bridge that we have, that we're finding in our lives, and trying to build momentum for a very different version of reality, one that we believe is much more representative of the greater truths. Therefore, we throw it out there. That's why we think it has value. In today's episode, we touch a little bit upon personal sovereignty, personal responsibility, personal accountability. We talked a little bit about the media's influence in all of this, and there are more than 1 or 2 nuggets in this second one. And we're going to get to the point where our titles more aptly represent what we're talking about, and we'll probably get to where we time, date, stamp throughout the whole recording different key points so that people can skip ahead to things that may interest them more. So I invite you to stick with it. We're going to get better. We've got, I can't believe this is only the second time that we've done it. It was a good take. So I highly recommend watching it. And stay tuned. It is going to live somewhere else, but for right now, it's on my YouTube channel. Justin's getting a Rumble channel set up, so it will probably live permanently there. And we may or may not set up its own YouTube channel. Again, we're kind of sharing a little bit behind the scenes, a little bit about the co-creative process, but we do think that even through this process, there's value. And, nothing makes either one of us happier than having these conversations, enjoying it, being fulfilled by them. And then if they can affect even just 1 or 2 people positively, it's like a dream. So enjoy if you watch, and more to come. We also don't know if they're going to be every week or every other week, but this time it's going to be every week. This is the second one, and last week's was released last Friday, so this one's going to be released on Friday of this week as well. Okay, enjoy. All right, good Sunday afternoon. This is practice recording number 2 from a new podcast series called Where to From Here.
Tentatively.
That's the title that we're trying out. This is take 2 on Sunday, November 5th. I am presently in Sarasota, Florida, and you are presently where, Justin?
Well, this absolutely is going to have to be a practice because right now I'm in Alameda in California getting my face and everything else burnt. I'm on a boat in Alameda, California, and I'm in here because this is the furthest I can get away from the running machinery. So hopefully there's no sounds of generators or anything in the background, but the concrete plant across the way just sort of fired up their whole mechanism, so I have no idea how good this is going to be. But I am having fun with this, so let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, no, on this end it sounds quiet.
Okay,
So
cool.
it I don't hear any machinery going in the background. So I guess let's give a little bit more of a background on what it is, a back and forth kind of discussion here on talk a little bit about like the high level reasonings that each of us sort of brought to the table in the conversation on the creation of this podcast. Like, in your head, what was sort of the why on, deciding to say yes to giving this an attempt?
Well, okay, yeah, I think it's kind of funny because you're going you're going like deep with it. I was actually going to try to flush out the Alyson for write-in presidential candidate here, and I decided that I didn't want to be your vice president anymore. I want to be your spiritual advisor. I think that would be the best thing. Well, to be continued. We'll touch on that a little bit. But as far as this, I mean, I remember the first time we ever talked on the phone. I think I was driving back up from South Florida. I just picked up a car somewhere in South Florida, and like a couple hours had gone by, and I was suddenly at my exit, and so it really worked out well. And I thought so that was honestly my motivation. I really didn't have any sort of deeper things than that. Than when you offered to do that, just mostly that I just enjoy talking to you, really, and and I mean, if it helps, it helps. Like more is the better. I love the idea that I can do something that I enjoy doing and have the possibility that it'll help you and maybe somebody else could chime in, throw something down in the comments and then help me back in return, something I didn't think of. So that's my motivation there.
Yeah. I know, it really hit me a couple of months ago when we went back and forth on some Telegram messages. And I just found that, we seem to have a pretty good balance between we're both what we consider to be spiritual beings and on a conscious spiritual path. But as human beings in form on the planet right now, we're still navigating what we often refer to as the 3D and the mainstream. And it's challenging. It's challenging to have that spiritual perspective and to try to navigate the nonsense and the craziness, especially when we feel like so much conversation and attention and energy is given to the current way, as opposed to getting out of the box and getting into our imaginations and getting into our heart and imagining how things could be, giving it voice, and then being ready to take action. And, there are a lot of people out there that fall on the spectrum of, wanting to do that, being interested in doing that, caring about doing that. And I think, when I listen to our conversations, the back and forth, it's just like a centering. It's just a great, it affects me in terms of the processing, and it also inspires me. And that's kind of a hard thing to find out in the world. So from my perspective, there was a hope too that, yeah, throwing this conversation and these conversations out there just might strike a nerve with others in some way that can serve them.
Well, yeah, and thank you, and I do appreciate that, and you saying that. But and you're right, because one of the things that what I've always, it's just so odd in my personal mindset that you don't ignore the tiger in the bushes because it makes you feel bad. And one of the things that I realize, and it's natural for all of humanity, like we all have this. There's a natural desire for the mind to recoil from what it finds uncomfortable. It does it automatic, it does it all on its own. And this is true for a lot of things. So one of the problems though is I've always, I want to be aware of the tiger in the bushes. I feel like, we live in the jungle, and the jungle has tigers in it. And just sitting there and pretending like we don't is a little silly in my mind. Only the fool pretends the tiger's not there because it makes him feel bad. And in this, on one side you have the love and light crowd, no bad vibes here, man. And then the other side, you have people that are just like I mean, you're far right. I swear it's almost like they enjoy the angst sometimes, and my personal goal is to be aware of the tiger while I'm quietly into the best of my ability and getting the fuck out of there. Like that's, like I'm not letting it, like it's not freaking me out. I'm not getting scared, but it's like, hey guys, the bushes are growling. I'm gonna go that way. And let's try to mitigate this, and I'm not gonna flip, but I'm not going to pretend like it's not there. And I'm also not going to throw down with the tiger either. You know what I mean? So it's like my goal is to remain free and focused and at ease so that I can live my best life and be my best self. And that's just sort of like my goal in my life for everything. And it's difficult. And so I totally understand how, like, I mean, I've made that a personal goal and I mess it up multiple times a day every day. So I mean, somebody that really just wants to come home and watch Dancing with the Stars, I get it. It's awesome, it's comfortable. They're not going to try to take this on. And I've always tried to, first of all, reach the people that I feel like you and like me that are aware of the tiger and do want to get the F out in the most rational way possible. And also though, but not to be ostracized, like not to I'm not out here to hurt anybody. So it's like, how do we communicate that the bushes are growling while exiting stage left without getting the emotional fallout that takes place? And so I feel like, yeah, that's one of the things that we do well, and I'd like to see more of. I guess, does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. And it was, I don't know that I had a direct question in there, but yeah, it really does. I think that's a great way to describe it because it's very much acknowledging that the current mainstream paradigm, what I like to call like kind of the vast majority of beings in form right now, are still operating under these fear-based systems that we've been conditioned to. And it's not about igniting or appealing to the fear in any way, shape, or form. It's about getting us more living in the love. But as you so aptly pointed out, love and light isn't going to get it done with where we are right now in a collective. If anything, the past few years have shown us that, there's some wacky things going on. There's a lot going on. And I just think it behooves us all to just sort of want to uncover that truth. And it's astounding to me how threatening that's just become in so many ways, and how challenging, because having honest, respectful communications that acknowledge the fear-based going on but don't feed the fear-based and try to guide us to these different ways, I just don't know that I ever would have imagined the playing field, if you will, would have been so ignited, and really the odds stacked against anybody who's wanting to have sort of these just more well-rounded conversations where we're not on this side or the other side and have to hold to any side, where we can just communicate as human beings and try to get at the values that I think we all align to, and out of the echo chamber of just the nonsense that's just been increasing for decades and really has just gone off the chain in the past few years. So I just think having those sorts of respectful, authentic, real conversations, again, where we're not having to toe to any line, where we're just speaking, I just think that's somewhat invaluable right now.
Yes, yeah, and well, we can actually make that today's where to from here then, I guess, because I do totally agree with you. And it's like, and so like I said, like we do live in a jungle. Well, we haven't as a species lived in the jungle for quite a while, but no matter where we've been, we've lived within a system. Before it was natural systems, like seasons, summer, winter, spring, fall, all of that. Now we live in a lot more mechanical systems, but it's still a system that we operate under, and there's still predators there as well. And like any system, like your car, you have to understand the system if you're going to fix it when it breaks. And honestly, getting angry about it or trying to be blissed out about it, how you feel about the car isn't going to fix it when it breaks. Kicking the tire won't fix it. Neither will talking sweetly to it. Neither will ignoring it. It's going to sit there until it gets fixed. And in order to fix it, you have to understand the systems so that are at play, and what broke, what went wrong, and the whole nine yards. And so getting to what you're talking about with most people being in like an emotional response of via the fear, outrage, and all of that. I honestly believe a big part of that actually has to do with the legacy media. So the where to from here, the here I would say about that is that like the legacy media around the early 2000s because of efforts of Newt Gingrich, they repealed the legislation that kept them from being owned by conglomerates. And that's when you saw all the big media mergers of the 2000s, you know, MSNBC. Now we have giant corporate mergers of all media to where all media across the nation is owned by 16 individuals, have controlling share, like 16 ultra wealthy, ultra powerful people have controlling share in all of the media we consume. And so the media has always kind of been about homogenizing the narrative, but you could still find shows like Democracy Now back in the day where it really was independent journal, like on channel 246 or something, you know what I mean? But it was there. And after that, it really went. The job of the media wasn't just to report the news. The job of the media was to create consensus, I really believe. And so, in the consensus they were trying to create was whatever was most profitable for the conglomerate corporations that own them, or the 16 individuals and their corporate interests that they owned. And so that was really the underlying purpose of the media became that. And that was best done through homogenizing the narrative and also keeping people in a constant state of either fear or anger. I think like I've walked by my parents' house and seen Fox News on. And it's like, I wonder what's going to be on today, fear or anger. Oh, look, we get both. It's Hannity. You know, it's like, so it's, and so many times I look at the narrative, I'm just like, oh my God, they take it and they torture it down to these ridiculously too banal, almost childish, emotionally charged viewpoints where it's like you either have to take shitty solution A or shitty solution B, and they pretend like this narrow little frame is the only lens to view the issue. And we can even take, well, I'll let you choose. We'll take an issue here just to outline this. And so I say we choose between two current events, either trans rights or Israel. And but that's my idea of the here. I lay a lot of it at the fault of the legacy media and the corporate conglomerates that own them. That's my here right now. So what about you?
Well, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. And I would say, in addition to their purpose serving to kind of control the narrative and to build consensus, I very much think part of the purpose is creating chaos and distraction and creating sides of these, arbitrary in some sort, but certainly limited whenever you think and you can narrow anything down to just two sides. I mean, they're really sort of infinite perspectives of any particular issue. And but I tend to want to put more of the onus and part of my there, not to jump to that, but part of my there is way more personal responsibility and personal accountability for the lives that we're living, for what we take out into the world, for the knowledge. I mean, it's on us. I gave up my TV, literally have not owned a TV since 2008. Haven't had one, won't ever have one. Now, that's not to say that, I mean, I even haven't had Netflix in 4 years, but I have Amazon Prime. So like I watch, if I watch a movie or television programs, I still have those streaming services or one of them. But I gave up the TV because it was so clear to me that it wasn't even speaking about the news of my life. It was providing information that I had no control over. It only made me angry. It was just so clear. You turn that off, and instead, your life and what you're engaging in, that's your news. And just we just have to stand up and say stop. That's as simple as it is with any of these things. And we touched upon it a little bit last week when we were talking about what we give our attention to. You give your attention and you're feeding it. And it's hard though, because the media was something that 2 generations ago, it was incredibly trusted. You had the times of Walter Cronkite. And so in less than 2 generations, we're talking about, I mean, it's a different world in way more ways than just the media. But I think it's also a matter of really looking at it as our personal, we have control over what we allow into our consciousness. in some regards, in a lot of regards. There might be a lot of subvert things going on and being communicated, and there are through the news, through the movies, through the music, but we still have the option to make a conscious choice if we want to continue to believe that that's the way that that's solving anything. So I know that kind of took us from you assessing a here, which I really agreed with, and sort of giving voice a little bit to, at least from my perspective, what I'd love to see us bridge towards, which is just a little bit more, hey, what's your personal experience with this issue? And that's what should formulate your opinions, not somebody's mouth coming over the tube.
You know, you're entirely correct there. You absolutely are entirely correct. And I've seen that because I also haven't had a television for my life, and I when I go to rabbit hole anything, I just start reading basically. Like I just start reading studies. I start, if it's an issue that involves science, I'll read the journals and all of that. And the questions and the analysis that I always have, and what makes it weird is that a lot of times the things that people say, I'll notice that different people will say the exact same thing. And I'm like, and it's like this weird sort of state where I'm like, why are you all saying the same thing that doesn't make sense? Like, why? Where did and yeah, the power of that, and that's why I say it's the narrative, the power of controlling the narrative, because they really do control the narrative, and you don't even see that you're being controlled unless you're not in it, unless you're like you are like you don't have a television, so you're not told what the issue is, and you figure it out on your own, and then suddenly like you're talking to people, and they're like, they give you that look, and then person A, like everyone just repeats the same one of two things, and you're just like, that makes no sense. Well, how is that even? What are you talking about? Like, it's not even a thing. Like, and and yeah, and can I continue? Do you have something to add to this?
No, no, no. Go ahead.
All right, so I'll pick one and I'll do the for instance. So like when I really started, when the trans issues and agendas came up, because I had a friend of mine that encouraged me to research it because I know nothing about it. So I looked into it. And what I discovered is I was like, well, the testosterone rates in men have been dropping for the last like 50 to 70 years steadily, basically since we started doing large scale farming. And I was like, well, what have we been putting in the crops? Well, we've been spraying a lot of pesticides on the crops, like glyphosate. And that's a known endocrine disruptor. And in every single scientific study conducted upon it, it has severe generational side effects and sexual side effects. And these side effects build up over generation. Like I have less testosterone than my father did, and he has less than his father did, and so on and so forth. And then it really started ramping up at around 2000 because that's when they discovered that glyphosate is also a desiccant, and moisture content ruins a lot of crops on the final on the cycle on the when they're bring the produce to market. So we all had been slowly being poisoned environmentally and slowly losing testosterone in men for generations. And then come 2000, bam, they started dumping it on the back end of the process, and suddenly the rates of glyphosate shot up. And then Monsanto made Roundup Ready crops that'll take all of it, and you had this explosion in severe sexual side effects. And then the way the legacy media is reporting on this, depending on which side, if you're a Republican, you blame the victim, and go out and attack the victim because I guess it's fun to kick around a teenager in skinny jeans. I don't know. Well, or if you're a Democrat, you make it a national holiday. Like, hey, we're all being poisoned, but you'll never hear this information, even though it's readily available to anybody because it confronts power. Like Bayer, which produces the glyphosate, and that's just one of several, but they're the biggest offender. But Bayer is a huge multinational, like they have a GDP greater than most nation states, or Monsanto, which we don't mess with Monsanto. No one messes with Monsanto. You go away when you mess with Monsanto. And that's the thing. And so it's funny. So that even just the story that's being told by the media itself just isn't even real. And about you say about the divide, a lot of people, I've heard that before, that a lot of people think that the reason why they try to divide the public, it's intentional because of the whole divide and conquer. I just really hope that's not true, because that takes it to a level of just Machiavellian nefariousness that like my heart would hurt going to. I mean, I could see like I have a hard time understanding somebody that has everything, a billionaire still wanting to make more money and willing to poison a nation to do it. I have a hard enough time wrapping my soul around that one. But then somebody is just like, and then we'll divide the people so they don't even know what's being done. You know. Oh, so
Well, I mean, not to be a downer, Debbie Downer or anything, but it's kind of hard to not see it as that. I mean, I didn't think we could get more divisive. I have personally never experienced anything that crossed every other previous sides and even split those with all that COVID was. And then again, similarly, when it's sort of telling when as an outsider, right, I really work to not identify as much of, I just don't like to align myself to any group of any kind. I just it's one of the reasons I didn't last in employment for others for very long, much more than 2-3 years ever at the same place, because there's just such an ingrained like personal identification with your group, and then you lose all ability to question said group, even when said group should be questioned or certain actions should be questioned. But when I worked on the organic farm here in town, I think it's fair to say that there were a lot of young folks I worked with that would probably gladly identify as kind of more hippie like, right? Hippie guys, most of them all leaning pretty far left on the political spectrum. And I thought it was pretty darn interesting with this trans agenda that the divisiveness even within that community, when it's like these are generally folks that are open to, they're not anti-trans, they're not anti-gay. These people are mostly collectively and individually very much no judgment of that. And when you saw this agenda roll out, I personally watched people in that community start going at one another in ways that just, I can't deny that what you just said you'd have a hard time swallowing. I don't see how we can't admit that that's exactly the levels of nefarious power that we're at. They are absolutely out to divide and conquer in every way imaginable. When somebody, a good friend of somebody who they know is open, wide open to how anybody wants to live their life, just brings up some very real concerns about children in single digits having operations to change their gender. I don't know how we can't, take pause and just say, hey, maybe we should really, really, have some open conversation about this. This is not a minor thing to change a gender when you're only single digits, and there's ramifications, and there's, and when you can't even suggest that without being attacked as, anti-trans and anti-whatever. And again, this wasn't me. This is me in an observatory place. Like I'm not very emotional to the issue. But I all I could see was, wow, it is unbelievable, just rolling out thing after thing after thing to divide and anger and upset. And I just think the only way we get around that is, I mean, I'm not quite sure. I don't propose to have the solution other than first and foremost, take a baseball bat to your television and come back to your own heart, like just come back to your own heart and the damn golden rule, treat others as you'd want, I don't know. I just, I don't propose to have a mass solution. I know for me, it began with getting rid of the TV, and then just, I like to meet things and people where they're at. I don't meet somebody because they fall under this category or this title or this. I meet people human to human. And we just have to elevate to that, to a different level.
yes, yeah, and then yeah, you're 100% correct, and I'll agree with what you said, because like what I was talking about before, with I'm talking about pesticides, and I've had people accuse me of being anti-trans for talking about pesticides, and it's just, I'm like, and it's this weird, and I just have to stop, and I'm like, I'm talking about Bayer, like the company, and the pesticide. I'm talking about food right now and the effects of pesticides on the endocrine system, and it's like, and these studies are all over the place, and you can see them. Like there was a famous one done here in California where they actually tried to put a gag order on the person that the researcher that they hired to conduct it, because it ended so terribly. And that's how I first found out about all this, as I listened to the researcher, was appeared on Democracy Now, which, for those people that don't know, is a very far left program. But Amy Goodman has integrity, and she brought this guy on here because she felt like people needed to know this. And then he put forward his research, and this is when I heard it, because he was trying to release it ahead of a gag order that the chemical company was putting on him. So depending on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go, you can go. But as far as to what you're saying, definitely kill your television, because these people have spent billions of dollars on research, on psychological research, to understand. I mean, and there's different things about that, right? So there's something called the heartbeat, and the heartbeat is, and they know that to maintain peak attention in a human being, there has to be some flash between every 4 to 6 seconds. So if you watch like Fox News, you'll see that's why there's a bright flash or a change of a screen or a dramatic something will happen every 4 to 6 seconds, and that's to keep your attention peaked. And then the people always will have a recent report, you're like, and it's to shock you. And when the mind goes into a state, if it can be shocked enough, it goes into a state of fight or flight, and then it becomes extraordinarily receptive. And then as soon as you can trick a mind into that state, you can then pour in as whatever line of bullshit you want, and the critical thinking goes away, because that mind is now in fight or flight. So you're entirely correct about kill your television, because they've spent billions and billions of dollars on trying to figure out how to place you into the most receptive state possible, and to keep your attention hooked. So it honestly could be viewed as almost like a psychological drug, where you're just getting this hit of like fear, doubt, and outrage like every 4 to 6 seconds. It's just not healthy. And I've seen what you've said before, where people like will come at, and it's a programming. That's why they call it programming. So somebody that's consumed that enough, the critical thinking goes, and just da da da, and they'll come at you, and you're like I said, like, I'm talking pesticides. Why are you accusing me of being anti-trans and telling me I voted for Trump? I've never voted for Trump. What the F are you talking about right now? And it goes from zero to weird fairly quickly, and you're just trying to like relay information. So I would see is, I would totally agree with you on kill your television, but I would also say that, yeah, you're right. It takes the desire of the individual to really reflect, and I would say have a goal. What is it you're trying to accomplish? And you attacking the other is not helping anything. Also understanding that.
Yeah, and I think, it's sort of I mean, I don't know that it's a spiritual concept, but it's always about, we live in a world that has convinced us and conditioned us that it's always about what's going on outside, that it's about the external, and it couldn't be more of a complete falsity. I mean, it's not, it's what your world and your outer world is, a manifestation of what's going on your insides. And so much of what we see is reflecting. So when you get irate at something, or you judging this Trump derangement, this, people, you got to look inside. Like, what is it that it's triggering inside you? That's another thing. I know that once I had what I refer to as my point of no return spiritual awakening, which was now coming up on the 12-year anniversary of that, it was almost an instantaneous realization of how much work of just keeping myself aligned to my truth and what rings true for me. What are, as you just alluded to, what are my goals that I'm pursuing, and realizing how little time I had for making it about, or even giving attention to, whatever it was outside. When you take the time to align yourself inside, it's unbelievable how your outer world reflects that work. And if you shut off the yelling and the anger, and God forbid, maybe even go a little bit within and say, what is this triggering within me? And do that work. To me, it's not a solution a lot of people want to do, because again, that's personal responsibility. That's being personally accountable for how you feel and owning it. And that gives us a sense of ownership and power if we make it about what it really is about, which is what's going on our insides, instead of going outside to change the outside. you got to change the inside. I used to believe I wanted to change the world. I've had dreams of changing the world since I was a little kid. And when I had my awakening, boy, not even right away, that was part of like working through that spiritualized ego and realizing, shit, I can't change shit. Like, it's not about changing the world I can't change for other people. I can change me. And guess what? My outer world absolutely has changed as my inner world has changed. And if we can even just get people to think on that for a second, just to be open to that concept for a second, that's throwing the problem on its head in a whole different way as well, because it's not about fixing out here. It's about all of us taking more responsibility of cleaning up our own yards, metaphorically speaking.
I would have to say that you are absolutely like 100% like, yes, right on with that, because I had the same thing. When I was a kid, I always thought like I saw problems and wanted to fix them, and the longer I've been on this journey of just really like mucking out my own life and my own inner hemisphere, the less I want to control anything.
That's right.
Like the
That's right.
more ducks I put in a row, the more crap I evict out of my own soul, the more like, because the same freedom and love that I enjoy is the same freedom that animates everything. And I love it. I love having it in me, and I respect it in other things, and so the more of it that I have, the more I clear out my junk, the more freedom and love of freedom I feel inside my soul. And the more I feel it, the less I want, like the more I want to see it in the world around me. I don't want to go out there and tell people how to live their lives. It's like a centering though, but I do love seeing this yeah, how do I put it? I do love seeing things work. I love good, like I now see things a lot more in terms of relationship. And a relationship is never right or wrong, but it can be healthy or unhealthy. And I find that I deeply enjoy healthy relationships more. It's not like I want to jump on something and control it, because that's an unhealthy relationship. But I do want to see healthy relationships between the people I interact with and the people they interact with, and so on and so forth. And so that's why I do say these things, but I always try to keep that in mind. And I guess a good way, because what you're talking about is sort of like reprogramming the idea of ourselves. So like, getting away from this emotional tribalism where we're just on a team, and we want the ref to call it our way every time, and there's no real goal except winning. Like, what are we winning? Like the people making the rules, like the people in the World Economic Forum that are billionaires and steer multinational corporations. I know why they're doing it. They're consolidating money and power. They're operating in their own interests. I don't understand why we're helping that process along. And like you said, like, so I'm on team us, I'm on team us, I'm on team everyman. And I know I'm not going to agree with everybody on team everyman. Like, I remember I was talking to my buddy. He's very intelligent mathematician, and he was confessing to me, because he consumes the media, he's saying, I'm becoming a bit of an elitist. And at heart, I was like, do you realize that you have 99.9% more in common with the homeless man on the corner than you ever will with any of these people running these companies, like owning these companies? And he got pissed at me. He got really angry about it. I was like, dude, I hate to say it, but like, yeah, you like absolutely, like, you didn't go to any of their schools, you didn't go to any of their fraternities that would never let you in. Like, you have no idea, like none. Like, and even economically speaking, because he's well off, he's been successful in his life, but even as successful as you are, if you were to actually break it down in a ratio, the money that homeless guy gets flying that sign on the corner, you are closer to that than you far, 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 much, much, much closer to that. Like, these people deal in sums we can't even comprehend. So it's like, I'm team homeless guy flying the sign on the corner. I'm team us. And I don't fault the powerful and the ownership classes, I call them, for creating their agenda and trying to run the world, because that's the soup they swim in, is control and power. But I also would like to see a world in which we like acknowledge that there's tigers in the jungle, and we don't like willingly lay down in front of them, or at least we don't help them out. Like, we don't open the gate to the village, like, come on in, guys. Yeah, like, that's my take. I don't know.
Yeah, I always say, I have a saying for myself, and it's I'm on everybody's team and nobody's team. And it's like, and both of those things simultaneously. Like, I've said, unless you're a globalist, multi-billionaire, that 150, 200 individuals on the planet that run the planet, if it's even that many, we're all on the same team. And it really behooves us to, again, go inward, call ourselves out on our own crap. And I couldn't have agreed more when you said how less, like, the longer I'm on this journey, it is so true how little I want to control. I don't even want to debate anybody. It's like, I'm not here to debate or convince anybody of anything. I would like for it to be a little bit easier to choose a path that is unique, that is sovereign, that is independent thinking, that isn't propaganda controlled and media controlled and money and material thing controlled, because it's not been an easy journey the past 11 years since going full-fledged into really not settling for any crap, that I, in a job or work, like really trying to not settle, really trying to have, a life filled with my passions. That kind of goes against what we're conditioned to believe. It's like, no, you're going to work a miserable job until you retire. And then maybe you get to enjoy life when you're retired. And if you don't die within immediately after retiring, because it's just nonsense, like how we're more conditioned. We're not really supported to believe that we can go after and support ourselves with our passions and our dreams. And that's not been an easier road, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And I certainly don't want to control anybody else or poo-poo on anybody's party that is finding success and happiness in the mainstream way. That's great. And that's what became so stark for me in the COVID times. That was really interesting for me individually to go on. I never had an issue that brought out, like, I'll go to jail for this. Like, my personal sovereignty, like, I had never had an issue that made it that clear. Like, my heart told me within the first week of it, I'm not buying into this. I'm not agreeing. This doesn't feel right. It doesn't make sense. And then as it kept changing, and it was unbelievable how upsetting that was to people. And I'm like, look, I don't care what you do, but you have no right to force me to stick something up my nose or to take a shot or to do these things that, I mean, when your evidence that you're using isn't even valid, it isn't even true. Even, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could get under. But that personal sovereignty piece, man, did that get strengthened in a way that I can't claim I had ever experienced. And it was crazy because I'm not trying to tell any of you what to do, but it was unbelievable how upsetting my choice for myself was to a huge amount of people in my network, in my event world, and then most especially in my blood family.
Well, yes, I mean, absolutely, and you're right, because, like, as you could probably tell, personal sovereignty is important to me as well. But I will surrender it if necessary. But going back to it was a bad idea. Like I said, it was about, like, almost like in the vid, it was not only not necessary, but it was a terrible idea. And I would talk to people in the same way. I'd be like, wait a minute, we're talking about like pharmaceutical industry, an industry that has time again put profit over people, that has time and again put rushed products to market, had their senior staff in the key advisory roles of the FDA, that currently has an illegal monopoly on insulin and is raping diabetics. Diabetics have to go across the border to Mexico to get insulin, and no politician can touch them. It was openly talked about on the campaign trail, the illegal monopoly that they have, and it's still going strong. So, and you want to give this organization complete carte blanche, like legal immunity to produce a product, and then you want to make said product mandatory and give them a federal monopoly when the monopoly they already have is illegal and they're abusing. That's a terrible idea. It's like I was saying, and so I see everybody, I see like my tribe, we're all in the village, right? In my mind, we're all in the village. I disagree with people, it's fine. But in my mind, I'm disagreeing with a fellow villager. But if I'm sitting there telling you that, like, there's growling going outside the gate, there's predators out there, and you're calling me a conspiracy theorist and you want to open the gate, we might just have to fight about it. Now, you're still part of my tribe. We're still in the village, but you're doing something really stupid. And there come a point, you're dangerous. And that's what I see was a lot of what was going on during COVID is like people became dangerous. So it went from like, I don't understand why you're helping the agenda to don't touch that gate. And it got there pretty quick. And so I felt the same thing as you because it got a little scary there for a hot minute. But yeah, I do think you're correct that like, yeah, that's first of all, we need to realize that we're all in the same tribe, that there is predators out there that we need to be aware of. Those predators are not like us. They are not us, and we are food to them. And I honestly see my there that I would say there is once is getting this mentality. And the system that we have right now is kind of like feudalism 2.0, where the kingships and the aristocracy runs on ownership. And so really what we need is we need a sense of ownership among the village, among us. And so I would greatly support um, cooperative corporations where like employee owned, like truly employee owned, like you don't get a paycheck, you don't get an hourly wage, you get a percentage of profit. And I
Yes.
would like a true profit sharing corporations. We could maybe have the land and the buildings and the infrastructure held in common, like it's held in a trust, like a community land trust. You put the land, you put the buildings, you put the infrastructure in community land trust that's owned by the collective, right? But it's not communism at all because that's really just a different form of a few people owning everything. It's truly owned by everyone where you don't get an hourly wage, you get a percentage of profit. And then we remove the endless struggle between labor and management because management is always going to try to get as much work out of you for as cheap as possible, which is what you were talking about with getting out of the rat race. And labor is always going to try to get as much wage as possible without breaking their back. But if we all share in that profit, now it is in my best interest to watch this product and this company succeed. And so that's where I really think is that kind of thinking tribally, like you said, kill your television, understand that we're all in the village and understand that we need to start having some mutual ownership or else pretty soon we're all going to own nothing. And I doubt we'll be
100%.
happy.
100%. And that comes back, brings it full circle to how I said, you turn off the TV, which is telling you what to believe and what the news is. And that right there is the first step of ownership because you can't begin to work with others, in my humble opinion, in that way, which I wholeheartedly celebrate and agree with what you just described, until you have a better understanding of yourself as a being to go into those things, owning. And I do think the step starts with you determine what the news is of your life. You don't need a television to tell you what the news is. You determine, really just finding the ways immediately where one can take more ownership of their life, even within these systems. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to, stop your IRA dedication money or whatever. Like, it's not about drastically taking these huge steps. It's finding these baby steps of personal ownership first, personal accountability, which I would argue is sort of almost an intermediate step to then be able to step into something where it's like, yeah, I'm going to make the conscious decision to co-create this type of business, this corporation, and agree to share profits equally with my teammates, with the people that are comprising this particular effort. I think it's a fantastic solution, and I wouldn't say that I'm on my way to directly experiencing that, but in my event world, I can just say this, that after many, many years of verbally intending to do sort of what we're talking about here, there are some magical things coming together in my event world where a number of us are beginning to bring ourselves to these events and to these opportunities in a very different way that's taking us a step closer from being the laborers for companies that don't care about us to being co-creators of our own thing, where we're more equally and equitably sharing in the work that we're contributing to bring the money there in the first place. So I can say that it works and it is possible, but it requires a high level of emotional maturity. It requires one knowing oneself and preferably what one's strengths and weaknesses are, and it requires one to be able to have the communication ability to do, to come to a table and say, what is your win, what is your interest, what are you bringing, what are you looking to get out of it, in terms of assessing these sorts of team efforts out in the world.
I firmly agree. I completely agree. And I think that I would like to end it on that, with that there. I would like to hear how you feel, and then I'll respond. How do you, because so that is the there absolutely that we all have to get to, where we all are capable, aware, and ready to take that on, to share in ownership, to have ownership ourselves and ownership collectively, to where we're all working together towards the good and sharing in the profit and what's being produced. So we have the where we are here, we have the there. How do you suggest we get to that there?
I, I mean, this is going to sound glib, but you just do it. Like I said, I set out dedicating the rest of my life 11 years ago when I started my company of me. My company of me. I don't have employees. I never will have employees. About bringing all of me out into the world, knowing I have various skills and various abilities, and literally saying we get to make it up. All work is assessing a need or a want out in the world and meeting that need or that want. The big piece often is the funding for something to come together to provide for a need or a want. A lot of times it's the funding more than anything that these corporations, provide for us. But there is, you set out on what you're trying to achieve, which is what I had as a vision, is exactly what we've been talking about. And you make the decisions. You start with where you are today and where can you make a decision that is taking you a step closer to that and a step away from depending on this company. And it begins first and foremost with a relationship with yourself, but then it begins with communicating. So like in my example, I've been working with a lot of these same event people locally in the state of Florida, in a lot of cases for well over a decade. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I have been talking this for a long, long time, and constantly making the choice when I can to do it differently. For me, that began to work when I decided I'm going to be a contractor. That is very different than being an employee, because I get to say yes or no if I'm going to an event. Like, that was how I made the choice in my world relative to what my details were. I made the choice by taking ownership at a different level, by being a contractor instead of an employee. And second, I'm going to talk, and I'm going to listen and feel for others who really are resonating on this sort of thing. And we're going to give our ideas voice, and then we're going to vow that when the opportunity comes to start doing it differently, we're going to choose to do it differently. And I shit you not, this has, starting in August this year, with a select number of people in my world, I can't even tell you how astoundingly awesome it is as this begins to come into reality. Right? Like, is it going to be next year something that we're coming together and we're all fully able to support ourselves in full? No, it's not. But it's about knowing where the baby steps are, and it's about taking those steps and having the courage to do that. Because when you take a step towards something that's not yet known, you're taking a step away from something that's known, and by definition then usually more comfortable, even if it's something you don't like. And so it just takes courage to do it. It boils down, have that vision. What does it look like? Look at your life and what you can choose in your life, and take the baby steps and just freaking do it.
Yes, and I love how you said that, because I remember that was a part in that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know if you ever read
I've
that.
read that. Robert Kiyosaki. Yep.
Okay, yeah, because that was the thing. It's like, you don't ever take an hourly wage. What he was telling the kid when he was young is just because then you're an employee, and you don't want to be an employee. You want to be an owner, even if what you own isn't producing anything for you in the moment.
That's
you
right.
want to be an owner, because
That's right.
that's the path.
That's right.
And yeah, and so you do that, and you begin acting. You see yourself as an owner. and that's what you are, and that's who you are, and then you just work from there, and you begin, taking ownership more or less. So yeah, I do say congratulations and good on you, and I hope that works out with the race world.
Yeah, I mean, and if it doesn't, here's the great thing too. If it doesn't, pursuing it takes me closer to something that does. I mean, that's what's awesome when you really, like I said, it's the spiritual journey, the spiritually awakened journey is so different than the journey that I was on before, but no one would ever know that, right? Like, but it really is when you understand, one, there is no finish line, so you're not arbitrarily, chasing, oh, I'm going to get this dream job, and now I want to make this dream salary, and then I want to have this much money in the bank. Like, it's just like, it's a constant striving for just evolution and continuing to grow and expand. And if you trust the process of that, and the longer you're on the journey, the more trust and faith you have in the process, and you just realize there's no real failure or mistake when you're on there. There's things happen that are undesirable. Like, I still have shit happen that I wish didn't. That wasn't the plan. But you learn to roll with it, and you learn to trust that it's happening for a reason. And if you just keep going and keep your eye on the ball, as they say, it's going to take you closer to where you want to go. But you've got to have that trust and that faith. And it's, that's a very different thing to have trust and faith in than the systems, which before my awakening, I just didn't know there was another option. If I'm being honest, I thought I had to fit into this world that made no sense to me. I didn't know there was another option. Then I had my spiritual awakening, where I basically was anchoring. I like to say I was anchoring in the sky now. Instead of, like, it's just like the sky really is the limit. I'm throwing my anchor up and, like, kind of pulling myself up, or allowing myself to be pulled and pulling myself upwards, as opposed to sort of staying laterally in our current world. So
This is why I love talking to you so much, because you're on the board, you're playing, you're on the board, you're on the stage, and I hope to meet you on the stage there sometime too, because I'm right now sitting, I'm not contracting right now, I'm being contracted for my license, and making this thing run. But yeah, I would love.
But you are on the stage. I mean, we are on the stage together. We're not on the stage together perhaps as often or in the dream ways yet, but we're on the stage together. Again, that's what I really, this is, as silly as it sounds, because we've been having in-depth conversations now for whatever 3 or 4 years, but taking this step in terms of just imbuing it with this energy and this wish and this hope that it feeds the world, and somehow that's us. We're on our little stage right now, in the sense of the stage of the there. We're on the stage of there, and we're trying to speak a little bit enough about the here, so that you give something for people to hook onto, but man, let's get the energy flow into the there. And that's what we're doing. And that's, so and there is no finish line. I mean,
no, there's not.
There's no finish line. I do feel like, like I kind of have this, like, it will be a beautiful day when I am fully supporting my relatively meager life as compared to most, when I am doing that truly with, when I'm like, just always engaged in the work of my soul, and not ever having to settle for, like, those paycheck gigs. That'll be
I'm into that. Yeah,
that'll be a great day. But you know what? It's also about, along the way, making those paycheck gigs, that keeps shit real, man. That keeps you grounded, and that kind of keeps shit real. And it's such a great opportunity to be in that world, but not of it.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm definitely in the trenches still. I might be a contractor and not an employee, but I'm still grunting out, a good chunk of how I'm supporting myself. But there is a distinct difference of, I get to choose. I get to choose to say, so if I ever want to say no, that is totally, and I don't answer to anybody. Like I answer to me. And that's a very empowering thing, but there's also a lot of personal responsibility that comes with that. And
Very
so
much.
I understand that not everybody wants that, or I can understand that, but it is a distinctly different sort of frequency of work.
Yes, yes. And and I like it too because you're doing it in the physical. My getting there from here has always been a much more internal process, a lot more woo-woo, a lot more etheric, definitely. Like and it's began with ownership, like of all things. But then I realized, like, well, I don't, come full circle, like I don't even own the air in my breath. Like everything to me is on loan. The material that makes up my body is not mine. Like there's not really anything I can even look at or point to and say, this is mine. Everything is on loan, or coming from somewhere and going to someplace else. And what I realized, or my getting there, and just everything that we've talked about today, was really just, it was almost like, I want to say it's a spiritual prayer, a really just prayer. It was understanding and acknowledging that there was that there was an infinite unity and persistent force, running on love and freedom, moving throughout all things, and greater than all of those things combined, and it was opening myself up to that, and that it also has a personal salvatory, if that's a word. It has a personal, almost salvation aspect to it, to where it doesn't matter what I do, it's always there, ready to accept me back into the unity, with complete love and trust. And I'm just like, wow, thank you. I fuck up a lot. So it's like, so that's yeah, it's like, I know we're all trying to improve the consciousness of the ecosystem down here, but sometimes I'm kind of degrading it, I feel sometimes. And so it's like, but in tapping into that, and that really what aligns my thought process and my desires, and what has aligned my desires, and everything that I've spoken about here today. It's instrumental in coming into that alignment and deciding that we all need to share the ownership, and that we all are on a fundamental level, connected in this thing. And I mean, even the people in the World Economic Forum, they're part of this too, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. They're one of us as well, and we have to make space for them, because they really are. They're just, I mean, if the more I know that the more centered I become, the less I want to control things. And I can only imagine how far off center you'd have to be to want to control the planet. So they need a lot of ayahuasca. I
Yeah,
mean,
mushrooms.
so
Yeah, they
it's
need a
like,
few they need a few
but
mushroom trips.
there is a salvatory force, if that's a word. It is now. But there is a force that moves through all things, that just loves and correct. Like I burnt the shit out of my hand this morning. Just made a mistake. Try to hold up here, you can see it.
Yeah, I see that. Yep,
See
listed.
that?
Yeah, that's
Give me
nice.
pancakes. No, yeah. And I just spent like an hour praying on it, and I just got to burst the bubble there, but the skin's already healed, and it stopped hurting, and it's already, the skin's already come back together.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, and that's just prayer, that's all that is. That's just prayer.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
hurt like a bastard the first hour or so, but I just sat there, just inviting that light into the space, and then stopped hurting, and the skin stopped being red, and now it's got a little, well, I guess got to pop that blister.
yeah.
But and that's everywhere and everything. And I think that the closer we are in line to that, the more we'll naturally, in of our own accord, desire these spaces that we're talking about here. That's my path to there. And I know it's woo woo, but it's what I got. It's what I work with.
Hey, there is nothing wrong with the woo woo. I'd love for there'd be a lot more woo woo in the world, and a lot less need to be as practical with it as we still need to sort of be and grounded with it, because the woo woo is definitely where it's at, and it's a more accurate representation of what we are at our essence. But we, at least from my perspective, I believe we came down here from the woo woo, from our spirit essence, to embody these physical vessels at this time on this planet for a reason. And what is that reason? I mean, that's part of the journey, right? Is discovering what you feel that soul purpose is. and the beautiful opportunity it is to learn how to integrate more of the woo-woo and elevate that isn't woo-woo, elevate it to that greater, just the vaster picture of what truth and reality is, because it's certainly a lot more than what this little realm on this little planet is. It involves a lot more than that. And it when you surrender sort of the game board up high like that and you expand it, man, there's just a lot more room for a lot more to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps we can do something some other time about what exactly I think is taking place in that internal dynamic, because I think that you're either controlled by one of two things: either you're controlled by the internal or the external, and most people are a conglomeration of both, like a little column A, a little bit of column B. But I think that would be a good subject for another time, because I
Yeah, I
think that
think
that
we're
is the 5D. The 5D is somebody that I believe is completely self-governing, that is controlled by the
yes,
internal, that does not
yes,
require external pressure in order to guide them into a certain path, into alignment, and that's the
yes,
5D. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. I believe it or not, I think we're well into an hour. We've been going.
Oh, oh, really? Again?
We've yeah. I mean,
I was gonna shoot for a half hour this time. Man.
yeah, I know we're a solid hour plus in, so I don't know exactly, but I know we started. So we'll wrap that up. I think that's a great way to wrap it up, though, because that really, I think, sums up a lot of what we touched upon today, because that self-governing 5D version of reality is ultimately one that requires us to be personally accountable, personally responsible. And I think we touched on that theme, danced around it at least, throughout today's conversation.
Oh man, and as Alyson Nouné, spiritual advisor, the Right Reverend Justin D. Matthews, would like to say to everybody here: you choose your write-in candidate to be Alyson Nouné, because we love God has inspired this woman to come down to us from on high and deliver us from these evil forces. Yes, God says, vote right in Alyson Nouné. Hey, if Pat Robertson can do it, so can I. So, Alyson, God wants you to vote for Alyson Nouné as write-in candidate for 2024. God bless America, and God bless you all.
Oh my God. That was pretty funny. But yeah, no interest in being in charge of anybody else. I'll be president for a world of personal autonomy and personal responsibility. So president of the world where we're all our own presidents. That's what I'll run for.
Good slogan. I'll sign off on that.
All right. Well, listen, I think this was good. I'm gonna end it and then we'll finish our conversation. So if you stuck with us for the whole recording, congratulations. And we'll come again with another episode at another time.
Peace.
So, peace.